Matthew Shell is a well-established artist with over 19,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. If you're my age, you probably know him best from the song It's a Jungle Out There from the Rio 2 soundtrack. He engineered the song for Philip Lawrence, another name that might be familiar since he's a 7-time Grammy winner. Matthew has also worked with many other award-winning artists, such as another familiar name, Selena Gomez. He helped engineer a remix to her song, Come and Get It. I find it interesting how I've been exposed to many wonderful tracks he's engineered, but never knew he was part of the brains behind it. Outside of music engineering, he also created his own original songs with various featured artists. Some of his recent work is the album Elemental, which dropped this summer. And today in studio, I have Matthew Shell. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Well, I'm sorry, my dog's barking in the background. I got 2 corgis. They're usually pretty relaxed, but noise got them. But I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. They're happy. They're hyped to have you here, too.
Thank you.
So, congratulations on your album completion. I know it's not your first album that you completed, but for me, it's one of the first albums that I listened to by you, like completely in full.
Thank you. I'm glad you like Elemental. I really enjoy making it. And my collaborator, Rune Shinoy, great person to work with. So I'm honored that's the first thing you heard and that you liked it.
Okay, so let's just kick off right into the questions. Elemental is an official entry of the MTS Music and Narcod Records for the 65th Grammy Awards. How did this album come about?
So Arun and I have been working for many years on different instrumentals and vocal productions too. And we just built a good working relationship. And it got to the point where I'd worked on so many albums with Arun that he wanted to make an album representing both of our names. So we had done one single many years ago titled Genesis, and that, went really well. And then it had a lot of buzz, and the video was released with Stephen Slate, who is a big engineer in the industry, and he released it from his channel and was there for many years, which was a great thing. And so from there, Arun wanted to revisit it now that it's almost 10 years later and do an album together. And so that's how this came about.
Yeah, I was about to say, most of our listeners probably heard of Genesis. I feel like that's one of the well-known songs also. And I feel like that's more of a pop-based instrumental than Elemental's jazz. So what songs do you think fans of Genesis will enjoy on this album?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, like you said, that was a pop instrumental with violin as the main piece, very, melodically structured. But even with Elemental, we try to keep the melodies memorable. While there is jazz soloing, all the chorus parts, or the hooks, if you would call it, have very, thought-out melodies that are easy to take in and enjoy. So it still has that contemporary instrumental, pop instrumental style, but then with jazz soloing. And then, so if the pop instrumental violin solo style of Genesis is something you like, on this album, the lead is Douglas Lira, who's on saxophone and on flute in one song. And so it just makes the feel jazz, but in the end, it's still very intentionally melodic and enjoyable to listen to. So yeah, that's the vibe. And if that's for specific songs, listener might like, if they like Genesis, I would say check out Protest and Justice, check out Visions of the Future, the song titled Answers, Think Critically, and then there are many other tracks from the album that still carry the spirit of Genesis.
You brought up a good point because many artists nowadays have followed this trend of mixing different musical elements. Similarly, your album does this with a mix of pop and then smooth and modern jazz. Elemental is described as a futuristic contemporary jazz album. When you use the term futuristic, is this a way to inspire other artists to incorporate your style into their creations, or do you see yourself creating a unique sound that we can look forward to in future albums from you?
Futuristic, I would say, is a term I equate with the album just because is not entirely live instruments, maybe 95% live instrumentation, but we definitely didn't mind adding some electronic elements, some layers, and a few of the songs. So, for instance, um, the title track Elemental, the track Sweet Dreams, and then Visions of the Future, those three songs have more layers than the other songs. They have more synthesizers, they have more futuristic sounds. So with that, and also the song Answers and the song Think Critically, all those five songs in particular have quite a bit of electronic layers and added horn sections and lots of things to make it really feel more full and futuristic. And also the arrangements. Visions of the Future, for instance, the arrangement is very out of the box in how it goes. And I appreciate you for playing that before the interview started. Thank you so much. But definitely, yeah, it's all about trying to incorporate elements you wouldn't normally hear in typical jazz, just to try to differentiate it. Because jazz, in its truest form, is when you're expressing yourself in your own signature way.
So
And
true. So
so
true.
that was the goal here.
I agree 100%. And
Thank you.
also, I have to ask because the song Elemental is in the name of the album Elemental. So, what made you choose that name? Like, is that your favorite song on the album, or like that's just the one you felt the most connected to when you were creating it?
Oh, thank you. Well, the honest truth of why we titled the album Elemental, the two reasons. Elemental just means being in touch with nature. If you look at the actual definition, it's related to or embodying the powers of nature. So important these days. There's so much going on as far as the earth being polluted, and part of the message of the album is, take care of Mother Nature and the earth, um, and there's subtle themes of that throughout the album, that because it's important to me, so that's one big thing. But then secondly, when we were designing the cover art for every single, because we released it one single at a time so that the album could build buzz before the full 10 songs were released. The cover art for Elemental just came out so good. The designer Alexandra Harris did such a good job on that, that I was like, Arun, why don't we just make it fits our meaning, and also the art is just so good. Why don't we have that be the cover art for the full album? And he said, yeah, that's a good idea. So sometimes things like just having really great cover art could be why we chose that over, let's say, Answers. Originally, we are going to title the album Nightfall because that's also a nature reference.
I was about to say
Um,
Nightfall is my favorite song on that whole entire album.
oh,
Like, I was
thank
gonna
you.
bring that.
Yeah, and that's Arun's favorite too, Nightfall. So he was like, let's name it Nightfall because that's my favorite song, Arun said. I was like, yeah, but I think Elemental can evoke more thoughts and maybe make people step back and question why is it like you asked me just now. It made it a little more interesting. So in the end, that's how that all happened.
That's amazing, just the creative process behind it. But yeah, I wouldn't change the name, even though Nightfall is my favorite song. I feel like Elemental really just brings it all together now, hearing the
Nice.
backstory behind it. But now I have to ask, what is your favorite song on the album and why?
I think Visions of the Future is my favorite, just because when you hear it in Dolby Atmos, it's a version of surround sound with 7 speakers, 4 speakers in the ceiling, and then either 1 or 2 subwoofers. It's like such an immersive way to listen to music. We mixed the whole album in Dolby Atmos as well as the stereo version, which most people are hearing. But if you go on Apple Music or Tidal, you can actually hear the Dolby Atmos version if you have Apple AirPods or if you have a Dolby Atmos setup. And that's the one song that just went to another level with the Atmos mixing style, because there's so many layers in that song that we're able to have near the end of the song, have them swirl around the room, do a lot of like cool mixing tricks. Roger, the mixing engineer for the Dolby Atmos version, just went above and beyond with that song. So it really, when I was on the fence at first about should we even record in should we even mix in Dolby Atmos? But then once we got started doing it, and I heard that song and how it sounded in the immersive full surround sound Dolby Atmos experience, I said, "Oh my goodness, yeah, let's do the whole album like this. Yeah, this is amazing." So definitely Visions of the Future is my favorite piece. Also, it's cool because there's a lot of variety on that track. There's flute soloing, saxophone soloing. There are background vocals from Eric Fredrickson. There's just a lot of cool things going on. That's just makes it a very varied track. And then the last section of that song, to me, is my favorite part of the album. It's so upbeat, and the synthesizers are just so cool with the saxophone by Douglas Lira. So yeah, I would say the Vision of the Future is easily my favorite piece.
That's amazing. I'm definitely gonna have to listen to it and to get that full experience. Put in my AirPods, just chill in my bed. I love it. I really
That's
love
cool.
it. So, one song on the track also really stood out to me for its interesting name. It's called Protest Injustice. The music video is just beautifully done. Like, as soon as I heard this on Spotify, I'm just like, I had to see the music video for it. And luckily,
Oh,
there
awesome.
was. Most of it was you guys performing, but I really liked was the ending part, which was just a single fist held in the sky. So, my question is, what made you write that song, and what do you desire for people to take away after listening or watching the music video? Because let me just say, even though listeners, you have not heard this song yet, there is no lyrics, there are no words on this track, but it's just an amazing, just well done instrumental piece.
Thank you. And if I know you were planning to play a song after the interview, that's definitely the one to play after the interview. It's my second favorite song on the album, and it's. I mean, if I was gonna make it really clear, it would be like protest police injustice, or something like that. But the police brutality in America had gotten crazy in the last couple of years with George Floyd and everything that went on, and I was inspired by like seeing how America responded in such a positive way, and actually took these matters seriously, and everything that went on, Black Lives Matter, and all that. So it's just really like to protest against police injustice, and again, but um, also supporting the people who've had, you know, injustice related to the prison system, injustice related to everything else. So it doesn't have to be just one feeling, and that's the cool thing about instrumental music. Um, you can make it and then let people assign their own values to it, their own thoughts, their own reason for the song. So it doesn't have to necessarily mean to you what it means to me and why I made it. So, but yeah, it's definitely the vibe and what I was going for. And also, it's one of those pieces where sometimes you start a song and you hope the end result sounds a certain way, and that one, exactly how it was in my head was how it ended up at the end. Sometimes with jazz, the end result could be completely different but still cool. But that one was like, because the melody was so structured, and even the ending, like how the guitar and saxophone play together, just shows unity. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of like hidden meanings and things going on. So yeah,
That
hopefully that
song.
answers the question.
Oh, it definitely does. I love how you talked about how the great thing about instrumental is. I like that point. There's no words, so you get to imagine it how you want it to be, the meaning behind it. And I love how you bring up about different types of jazz, because contemporary jazz is probably what most of our listeners vibe with, from its funk and its rock with a whole lot of saxophone mixed in. This album really embodies that, with each song having a pleasant melody with a simple pop oriented structure. What stemmed the desire for that vibe on this album?
I mean, I think it's staying true to real jazz. Like, so the two biggest tenets I would say represent jazz music is, one, being true to yourself and making a sound that's unique to you, and two, not just having one lead instrument the whole time, having call and response. So a lot of the songs it was not just saxophone, but it'll have sax and piano, or sax and flute, or sax and guitar, and the call and response back and forth. That's really important to jazz. So um, but then I mix it with in jazz they call it either the hook or the head. Um, having hooks that are very structured and the melodies well thought out make it stick in your head better and make it honestly feel a little more modern. Of course, great jazz music in the past. Miles Davis was amazing at making a good head or a good hook, chorus, whatever you want to call it. Um, and you know, Coltrane, they've mastered that technique. But you know, trying to bring it into the future and do it my way while respecting the past is important, because the last thing you want is to make something too cookie cutter. And then the jazz community, you know, shuns it. But I think so far a lot of the jazz community really likes it, and then it also appeals to the average listener too. So um for and the way I appreciate Spotify, for instance, is 8 out of 10 songs got on Spotify curated playlists, including a song right before the album, which was called Nature's Kiss. That was a one-off single I put out that I think is caught at Spotify's attention, because that one got on 4 of Spotify's playlists all at once. It got on
Ooh.
the State of Jazz playlist, which is something like 800,000 subscribers. It got on All New Jazz. It got on Changes. It got on Sax in the City. Um, and then it got on something else. No, those were the 4. So then, because that song blew up and it was perfect timing, we already had the whole album rollout planned. Then we had their attention, and then each single just kept getting on those big playlists. But each single maybe one or two playlists each. But it was definitely a blessing to see it catch and hit, like All New Jazz, the single Elemental. That's a big playlist too, and the lead single Elemental got on that one. And then the others are on the other playlists I just mentioned. So there's definitely seeing that. That means that the jazz curators at Spotify still, you know, saw it and liked it, and just appreciate it. And that's also a good lesson to anyone rolling out your album. Having single by single before you put out the album is the best way to get on Spotify playlists, is because you submit it maybe a month before. You get it set up in the system on Spotify for artists. You submit the single, and then that way they have time to review it and see if they want it in their playlist. If you just drop a whole album all at once, you can only submit one song. And then if you try to release singles after the album's submitted, they don't accept that. It has to be brand new content. So the only way to get on multiple playlists is to have single by single leading up to the album release, because then each one is new and they can be submitted. And so you have art for each single, and then you have the album release at the end, and that's how you can really get your numbers up, and one of the strategies. So yeah.
You listeners brought a notepad because he is spitting facts right now. I know we have a lot of up and coming creators who love to listen to our show. So, can you describe your experience as a music engineer and how did that help you when writing songs? And can you describe your songwriting process?
Yeah, so a sound engineer, I became one just because I loved making music so much, and part of the process for me of making music is making it sound right. So struggling really hard to get things to sound right um, is why I became an engineer, because I wanted it to be more effortless and easy to get to the point where each instrument sounded the way I wanted it, and I could mix things myself if I needed to. I could engineer each instrument myself if I needed to. Um, and really know I could control every aspect of the process to make the end sound as good as it could. But I also have that classical training, playing a lot of instruments myself. I play piano, was classically trained. My mom was a concert pianist. I play guitar, which is my main instrument. I also play bass, drums, African instruments, Indian instruments, stuff like that too. But you know, so having the musical chops and the music theory and all that down, but also having the engineering chops, I feel made my sound really emblematic of artists like Prince, who was an engineer, and artists like will.i.am, who's an engineer as well. So um yeah, it's important to have the sound right, not just the arrangement right. So they go hand in hand. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and also just a little fun, little quirky thing. So, how do you write songs? Like, do you whip out your phone whenever an idea strikes you? And is there ever a time you just look back at a song you written and are just like, oh no, like what was I thinking? This is not what I thought it would be. And on that note, do you also have any advice for people who might be struggling to write music? Like, they'll look back at what they wrote and they lose confidence because they don't think anybody will like it.
Well, I think the key, it answers almost all the questions with this simple thought that never be too critical when you're creating. So I allow myself to make the stupidest lyrics, the silliest ideas. I just put everything down. I could be walking and then, oh wait, then record with a voice note some lyrics. One of my best songs that has vocals called "My Baby." I wrote for my wife, and I was walking to work, and I just came up with the lyrics and all at once. I was just listening to the instrumental I had made, and then I was walking. I was like, hold on, pardon me, and as I was walking, the lyrics came to me. So I was like, I need to record this, not just write it down, but record it real quick. So just like you said, it can come, but I'm never critical. I like, no matter what the idea is, I try to record it and keep it moving and then come back later. And if it's cringy, I don't judge myself, because that's the biggest thing. I think people have paralysis through analysis. I know
Mm-hmm.
so many talented musicians, I won't say their name, that I've worked with or just have been good friends with, who I would say are better than me, but never release anything because they just overanalyze their work. They're too hard on themselves. And then they get to points in life where life takes over and they don't have time to release the music or finish the stuff the way they want. And they're geniuses, but they just never get it out. So part of being a music professional is knowing how to finish, knowing how to release, knowing how to get the cover art, the music videos, everything done, so things can reach their fullest potential and not just get stuck on the editing room floor.
You hear that, guys? Give it your all, no matter what. Somebody might like it and appreciate it, even if you don't like it yourself. My other question for you is, you said you play a plethora of different instruments. So, how would you describe your immersion into the world of jazz, other than just music in general? Like, what made you want to create jazz music and be an artist in this genre?
Right on. I think growing up, having my dad, he was in the Navy band, he played trombone. As I said, my mom was a concert pianist, was at the Royal College of Music in London. I just had exposure to a lot of great music, including classical music, including a lot of jazz music, and just hearing Miles Davis, Coltrane, and then bringing it to the future where you have artists like Chris Bodie, even Sting, people like that were very inspiring. Dave Grusin, artists like this, having both things, Brubeck, all these people from different eras that I enjoyed, just made me gravitate toward jazz, because I was like, I love writing lyrics. I had written maybe 300 songs before I graduated high school that never were released,
Mm.
but that built my skills as a lyrical songwriter. And I bust out those skills if I'm working with a client in the studio. I can write on the spot and work with them. But I find, as my expression, I like having instrumental music as my expression, because also it leaves room for interpretation. People can enjoy it in their own way. It doesn't never has a political, for the most part. Maybe Protest and Justice has a bit of a political message, but in general, like, it's mostly politically free of that baggage, and people can just enjoy it however they want. um and also, a lot of my jazz is relaxing and just makes you feel good in general. So that's been my goal, is to take things in that direction, but also have that foundation um, in the truth of what makes jazz jazz. And again, like I said, it's all about being yourself and then honoring history while making something new. So um, yeah, that's the immersion in jazz. And I'll give a shout out to Trey Ely, who is the first jazz flautist or flute player that I work with. He taught me a lot about, like, the history of jazz. At that point, I had definitely listened to a lot that my parents had shared, but he got me even deeper into Herbert Laws, and like um, all these musicians that might not be at the top of everyone's list, but that are just equally as incredible, you know. So Thelonious Monk, everything like he turned me on to was really cool. So, and then also he was a cool recorder of how he performed, because he was super true to jazz in that Trey Ely said, I only do one take. So if I come in, I play flute, that's the only take you get for that song. And it's not an arrogant thing. It's just that sticking with jazz. You don't piece together a solo. Like you get their emotion start to finish, so you can feel the story of the song and the story of whatever they're going through that day. And a great example of that is the song Beauty in Freedom that I did with Trey Ely. If anyone wants to check that out, he did that. It's a 10-minute instrumental that I created, and his solos were done in one take and worked perfectly. So yeah. And then also shout out to Marcus Johnson, who was the first jazz artist that I worked with. He's a jazz pianist, and I'm still working with him to this day. Um, and working with him was really eye opening to see how quickly he worked. It was really cool, because before that, everything I did was really labored, and I took a long time, and I would do take after take and chop things up. But just like Trey, he was more like, nah, we're capturing the solo. That's what that is. And he wasn't against, like, when you're setting the foundation of the song, doing section by section, and we moved fast, and there was one song, Latin Funk, that we did. We got the whole thing done in 1 hour. Like, it was the fastest I've ever worked on a song. Yeah, that's a bit about my immersion into the world of jazz. Hopefully that answers the question okay.
No, that's amazing. And you took us on like a journey of your process of like how you got more into the groove and how you're editing music now. And I really like that interesting one take perspective, because of course we have some people who are music majors who listen to our show, so maybe they just want to post their own music. So maybe that's something for them to try, just like for them to like play a song and just say, okay, this is what it is. I don't need to go back, edit, no auto tune, no anything. I just want to submit it in its raw form. So
Yeah, definitely encourage anyone who wants to do jazz to let their emotion, whatever happened to them that day, inform how they perform it. Um, yeah, and because the only instrument I can really function that way as a soloist is guitar, where I'm completely free. I'm not thinking. Like, if I play piano, I'm still like thinking chords. I'm thinking, but I've had so much practice on guitar that if I play it, I don't have to think, and I can just express what I'm feeling. And that's usually the best way to look at jazz is just get so good at your instrument, practice so much that you get to the point where now, instead of you trying to hit certain notes, you just can express how you feel through the instrument.
thank you so much. And our listeners, if they want to, hear more from you or figure out what your next move is going to be, where can they follow you on social media?
Oh, definitely just go to mtsmusic.net. So like Matthew T. Shell Music, mtsmusic.net, and all my socials are there. Instagram, Facebook, everything. So you can find that all there, Twitter, all that. So, but yeah, that just makes it easy. mtsmusic.net. And and there, there'll be links to Elemental, links to everything we talked about. So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you for your time today. Anything else you want to leave our listeners with? Because we really appreciate you.
I'd say just collaborate. Make sure you don't just stay in your own bubble. Like, I only really got good when I started working with other people. And so if you want to get good, collaborate, try to make tracks with other people. Just like now that I've made this album with Arun, it's the best way to really come out of your comfort zone and think outside of your own box. Because if you just keep doing your own thing, like, you're gonna get stuck in a rut. You're gonna just start sounding the same with everything. But the more you work with other people, you learn how to be patient. You learn how to hear and listen. And being a team player just means to really do your part. And being a team player is being reliable. So being able to work with people will build that skill, because then it's not just you. It's not like, oh, I can just wait 8 months and we'll release a song later. It's like, no, let's get this done. We're working on it together, and it helps you work faster. It helps you be a good team player, and those are skills that can translate into any part of life. So definitely collaborate. If I can give you any advice, just start collaborating. And it also helps you share your audience with their fans, and their fans come and listen to you. So it's one of the secrets to how I built my fan base, is just collaborated with so many people, and then you never know what could be a big hit. Like this song, the cover we did, me and Trey Ely and Kenny Wesley, we did of "Rock with You," that blew up. I think it's at 400,000 listens on YouTube. The music video for that, and something like that can lead to like all the. I think at the time that's when I just had Twitter, and my Twitter is up to 80,000 followers just because of that, probably that one song. So you never know like how you're gonna get your fans, and it usually happens when you make something hot and you share that process with someone else. So yeah, collaborate.
Collaborate, think, take notes, and maybe just take it in one take, huh?
And then interview with cool people like Melissa.
Yeah. But
Don't be afraid to talk and chat with good people.
yes, and thank you so much for coming on all mixed up. I know we're through Google Meets, but thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.